Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you that are looking to create some kind of a productivity app or maybe a to-do list application using Appgyver to create an app for free, stay tuned. I'm going to be covering how to do that in this video. Now, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. Now, I'm going to be including several tutorials in the description. For example, we're going to be going through this first part pretty quickly, but I'm going to put some links to other videos where I've covered this in more depth, basically kind of breaking this up a bit. But this video, start to finish, I'm going to walk you through how to create exactly what we have here. So we're going to go ahead and jump straight in. So first thing, you're going to go ahead and create your project in Appgyver. If you don't know what Appgyver is, you can create a free mobile application as long as you're making 10 million or less in revenue. Double check on the pricing page to make sure that I have those numbers correct. But we're going to jump straight in. So first things first, we have a title and text. If you're confused about how this interface looks and how I have it set up, there are rows right here with an input field and a button. If you're confused by this, check out my Appgyver tutorials. You should be able to get caught up to speed pretty quickly on what we're doing. So we have title, text, input 1 button, input 2 button, input 3 button, and then see my list. So the way this is going to look, I'm mirroring my phone on the right hand side, and this has the Appgyver preview app. The way that we're going to design this is you can type in the number 1, number 2, and number 3, and you can click Save next to each, and then you can click See My List, and you'll have the options here, and you'll be able to click it when you're done and deselect when you're not done. So the idea here is when you back out of the application and you click on Productivity again, when you click See My List, you should still see the options. Now you'll notice all the checkboxes reset because we haven't fixed that just yet. But at the very least, the options should still be here. Now the number 2 is missing because I changed it for a previous video, so we'll fix that together. So first things first, we're going to cover how do you get this information to save to local device storage, because we can't use an app variable here. The reason being, when you use an app variable, you'll notice this number 2 is an app variable. It's currently bound to the app variable to do 2. Now, when you close your application in the preview app, my understanding is when you back out completely, it's similar to closing, if not the same. So you'll notice that the app variable has been reset. No one wants to have a to-do list that disappears every time they close the app. So the idea is we're going to save to local device storage. That way we can still use this offline. Now, there is one thing to consider when saving to local device storage, and that is how long the data is stored for. So what I would recommend here is, since you're looking to save to local device storage, factor in a couple of things. For example, what if the user clears their memory or their data or the cache for that application? I know in Android there's an option to do that. So they could, if the application is slow, go clear their data or cache, and could result in this information being removed from the actual application. Additionally, you may want to look into Appgyver's documentation to see if those local data variables and the data storage are going to be reset or removed or altered in any way when the application is updated, as it's likely you're going to push updates to your users. And also make sure that you're following any relevant laws, rules, regulations regarding data storage and privacy, things of that nature, as I'm pretty sure this kind of stuff is not going to be encrypted, so make sure you're following what you need to there. And lastly, I'm going to put this resource in the description. I'm not affiliated with the person who made this or the channel or any of that, but it is a really interesting video that covers additional information on the checkbox in Appgyver. So again, that covers the basics. Let's keep going. So what we're going to do, I'm going to walk you through the basics of how you're going to need to have this set up on this page here. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the Data tab, and you're going to go to Data Resources, and you're going to add data resources for each of the to-do items. So what I've done is I've clicked Add Data Resource on Device Storage. And then you should get a screen like this. So I'm going to show you what I've done on this first one so we can move pretty quickly. I named it Resource 1. I named the description 1. ID comes up by default, so you don't need to change anything here. This is the ID basically for this resource schema, or the resource kind of helps to identify it. So what I did is I went down here and in Add New Property, I put First To Do. And then in the second data resource, I named it 2, put 2 as the description, and then I put second to do here. Remember that because we'll be referencing that in just a minute. And then you'll just, so basically to add it, you're going to save data resource, but to add the property right here, you'll type in the name. So I put first to do, and then you need to make sure to hit this little plus button. If you have characters that aren't supported, when you click the plus button, nothing will happen. So make sure that it shows up here, click save data resource, and again, make a resource for each one of the options. The reason I'm not making one resource and setting up a schema to have different to do options so that we only need one data resource. The reason I'm doing this is when you do API calls, if I'm not mistaken, essentially, if you have first to do, second to do, third to do in the same data resource, if someone leaves one of them blank, it'll override the value to a blank value. So if I put to do 1, go to the grocery store, to do 2 is get an oil change, then and the second time around, I put the second to do is get an oil change, but I didn't say anything about the first one. It'll remove go to the grocery store. And I don't know if that's how it works all the time with API calls. I believe it is. Don't know if that's how it works with client-side storage, but I'm doing it this way to be safe. So make your data resource for all of these, and then you can click Save. Then we have to click the Variable slider, go to Data Variables, click Add Data Variable, and select the data variable for each of the options that you just made. This allows that data variable to be visible on the page. So you'll click Add Data Variable, click 1, 2, and then 3. I've already done that, so it should look like this here. Now you'll notice it adds an extra 1 after each of the data variables. Don't worry about that. That's perfectly fine, or that is completely fine, I should say. Now, we'll move the slider, and then we're back to our interface. So the last thing we'll do is we need variables for these. So we're going to make an app variable. So we'll click the slider again, and app variables, we will click Add App Variable. We're going to add an app variable, so you just click it, you'll name it, and then you can click Save, and then you can keep adding more. So I'm adding a variable for done 1, done 2, done 3. That's for the checkboxes. And then to do 1, to do 2, and to do 3 are going to be basically where the data variable is going to be coming from. So when we click on our first input field and we see value here, we're going to click on this currently bound. We'll click on data variable, app variable, and we'll click to do 1 and we'll click save. So basically, as you type here, you don't need to click anything. As you type, the app variable is basically immediately being updated. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click on the Save button. We'll click on the Expand dialog here. Again, there's a more detailed video of this in the description, but basically you're going to, you won't see any of this when you first start. So what you're going to be doing is we're going to scroll. You're going to be dragging over Update Record. So you'll just click and drag. You'll drag over Create Record. And then you'll drag over the toast message. So those are the 3 options, and that's how you drag them. I'm going to walk you through the settings for exactly what I have here next. So you're basically going to make sure that this node for component tap is connected to update record. You just click and drag and let go, and it'll connect it. Then you have update record set up. Next up, you're going to connect the bottom node from update record. And the reason I know it's the bottom is when you select this and you go to outputs, you'll see first one is the success, the second one is the failure. So if the update record doesn't work, I'm going to assume the record isn't there. So I'm going to connect this to create record. And if the update record works, then I'm going to connect it to a toast dialog. And when you select this and go to properties, it just says updated. Or you could put success, since technically creating the record would be a success as well, but you're not updating a record. In theory, if you're creating it, you would probably say created. So again, if that's confusing, you can have different dialogues. But the idea is if it works, it'll say updated. And then if create record works, the node is connected to updated. And again, if you click this and choose outputs, you'll see success is the top node, the bottom is the error. So now we're going to actually update the record. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the update record, and on the properties tab, Under resource name, we'll click the resource and we'll choose the data resource number 1. And then under ID, we're going to click on this, this little option here, which is bound to. And when you select binding type, we're going to choose formula. And here we're going to choose the ID that corresponds to our data variable. So because we've added all of our data variables to the page, they're visible here. If yours are missing, you have to click the variable slider and make sure to add it. If you remember earlier, I said if it adds the number 1 to the end of it, don't worry. This right here is showing basically just that. So the option that you're looking for is the ID. And if you remember, I said this is something that's basically identifying it. So you're going to choose the data variable, whatever you named it, plus the additional 1 will be in these quotes. It'll have 0.id. If this format changes over time, just make sure you choose the ID option. And then you're going to go to the record. So yours should say custom object or something like that. If the interface changes, your goal is to find the app variable and select it for this option here. Now, I just want to make sure that you see what this actually looks like. So if you choose the binding anytime in Appgyver, or most times, after you've already configured it, if you choose the formula option, it'll actually show you the formula for whatever you've done. So we'll look at this formula, and you can actually type this out if you prefer to do this, or if you can't find the binding, if you're having trouble. So you'll see in brackets, we have first to do, which is what I called the to do option. So that's the record in the data variable from earlier. Then we have a semicolon and a space, and then we have the app variable to do 1. Now, if you don't know the name of your app variable, you can choose this tab, and if you double click on one, it'll add it in right here. So I'll delete this, but again, that's your formula in brackets, and we'll click save. So we've set everything up on this page for this one. Now, if you remember, we need to update this one together. So you'll see the value here is to do. So for these 3 options here, go ahead and do everything that I've just done on your device for whatever fields you have. So you can follow those steps for these next 2 and 3 or however many options you have. So you'll have your currently bound to app variable number to do 2. And for the save option, we're going to go to update record. Resource name is 2. ID is the ID for 2. Record is the app variable to do 2. And this is basically saying we're updating the record in the data variable with the record from app variable. So we've finished up this page. So the last thing is a button that takes us to the to-do list page, which is this page here. So we'll save this and go on over to this page, and we will update this record. So instead of this being essentially the app variable to do 2, what you're going to do is you're going to select this option here and go to formulas, and you're going to go to data variable, and you're going to choose the to do record. So for each of these options, it's going to be something different. For this one here, this is going to be your label. So you'll choose the formula, and you're going to choose the data variable first to do. If you remember, that's what we called ours earlier. Choose whatever corresponds to yours. So you'll select data variables, and you'll find the one that you named, which is the record. That's what you want to see. And you're going to repeat that process for these next 2 or 3 or again, whatever you have on your screen. So we'll click save here. And then next up, what we're going to do is we have to make sure that these options here are saved correctly. So essentially what we're going to be doing is you'll see we have the label, which is the name. Now we need to make sure the value. So you'll see the value for true is here and the value for false is here. So on the left-hand side, we have what it's bound to. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select this, and we'll choose data variable. And then we'll choose the data variable here, and you'll see we have the option for 112131. So basically what we're going to do at this point is we're going to go ahead and set this up so that the data variable will correspond to the checkbox so that when the application is closed, it will still work. All right, so I've been reviewing a couple of different options here for getting this set up, and I'm going to change things just a bit. So I've been having a bit of an issue getting this checkbox to persist on app closure. So I'm going to give you a quick update on this. So we're going to change this up just a bit so that checking this checkbox still marks this as done, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So to walk you through, basically what I tried doing was I tried storing the value here as an app variable following similar logic to what we did in this first page here. However, the app variable did not seem to persist when the app was closed, so I followed the same steps for the previous page to get those values to show up here, to get them to persist on app closure, and this value was not stored correctly. So I'm going to do something else here, which actually may be a better alternative. So what we're going to do is when you select this checkbox, it will actually cause this value to be removed. So I'll show you how that's going to work. Over here on this side, I'm mirroring from my phone using the Appgyver preview app. So we're going to save this one as first, and then we'll go to second, and then we will go to third. So you'll see here, we'll click save, we get our little toast dialog, and we get it for each one. And then we're going to go to see my list. So now we have 3 options. Well, now I want to mark one as completed. So I'll just click check, and you'll see I get a little toast dialog, and then it takes a second, but that disappears. So we'll go to second and third, and you'll notice those disappear, and we get the toast dialog as well. So everything appears to be functioning as expected here. So here's what I'm going to do. It may seem relatively simple, but we're going to go over a couple of mistakes that I made previously to make sure that everything's corrected here. So again, right here, this is just the app variable to do 1, to do 2, and to do 3. The save button, here's what the logic does. It will update the record, and that is going to be the resource 1. Data is going to be, so this ID is a formula, and I'll click it just to show you. It's the data variable, and you'll see right here it's 1, 1, and it's the ID. So if we go to data variables, it would be this one right here. So you're selecting the ID for the data resource, meaning when you add the data variable to the page, it adds that extra 1 here. So we're just selecting this one, and that's basically the ID. Then we do the record. So the record here, what we're doing is we're basically updating first to do with the app variable to do 1. And then you follow that same logic going down for update record. You'll notice it's the exact same, but for the second to do, same with the third. Now, in the event a record does not already exist, it means they're creating it for the first time, which could mean it's the first time the app's being opened, or they deleted the previous record by checking that checkbox. So we have this create record option here, and it's very similar. You're just updating record 1 or creating it, and you're creating first to do app variable to do 1. So basically, this data variable or data record is going to be updated with this app variable. Now, the first time I did it, I put this in quotes, which was a mistake that I found later. And if you put this in quotes, instead of creating with the app variable, it's literally going to create with this text here. So I'm not going to show you, but basically if I were to click save for the first time and go to the next page, it would show this text instead of the app variable. So simply by deleting those quotes, now it's going to push the value of the app variable and then give us a dialog if it works. If you want, you can have a failure dialog as well, but I don't really have a need to do that right now. So again, you're updating the record if there is one. If there isn't, you create the record. Either way, when it's done, you get a dialog that says it's done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show you the logic for page number 2. So when we select this option, what we're doing is we're updating the record. Now the reason I'm not creating a record or doing anything else is the only time we really need this record to be updated is when there's already a value here. Otherwise, there's really no need to care whether or not they select the checkbox. So you'll notice here it says update record instead of delete. The main reason I'm doing that is I don't want app variable 1 to appear on the next page. So sometimes if you delete this record, it could put what the app variable is at that time. So it could just say app variable 1 or something else. So what I want is a blank value here. So what I did was I moved over this update record option. So if you scroll through, you'll see it's right here, and I dragged it over. And here's what I did. So for the first one, it's updating resource 1. You just select this and select your data resource for that first option. Then you follow your ID. This is something we've already been doing, so you're just going to that resource and you're finding the one that's .id. Again, that's helping to identify. And then the record itself, you'll see we can basically add in a formula, and this may look a little odd. So you'll see we're putting first to do, and we're just making it a space in quotes. The reason I'm doing this is I want there to be some kind of a value there. So basically, I want this to appear empty. Instead of deleting the record and potentially having some filler, I'm just going to have it as a space, especially because with mobile apps, you can't really hold and see the space, and no one's going to try to select a blank area anyway. So what I'm doing is I'm going to copy that down here. I do the same thing, and you'll see the default value I'm choosing is false because I want it to start off deselected. And then again, you're just updating the record and you're replacing whatever the data resource or data variable is with a blank space. So it's effectively deleting it. So you can do that for all three. And then you can save your changes and we'll see what it looks like here. So what we're going to do is we're going to back out of the app completely and start from scratch. So we're going to put in first to do. And then here we'll put second. And then here we'll put last. And we'll click save on each one of these. And then we'll click see my list and you'll see they populated first to do, second, last. So now we can just check each one of these. And then you'll just wait a second or two and then it clears them. So now we go back, and if we go to see my list, nothing's present. But now we want to see if those variables save. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it to first. We'll capitalize second, and then we'll capitalize last. And now I want to see if this persists when the application is closed. So first, second, last. So now we're going to do this basically like a close. And then we'll open the page again. And although these values are blank, when you go to see my list, those values did in fact persist. So now we're going to mark this one as done. And then we're going to back out. And now when we go into productivity and we click see my list, you'll see the first one and the last one are there, but that middle one is still empty. So effectively what we've done is we have saved these values here to your local storage. And because it'll update, we can type letters here, and you'll see it changed the first one, did not change the last one. And then again, this would be your app closure when you open it again. Sometimes in the preview app, it makes you click this button twice, but you'll see all of the values have been updated. So effectively what we've done is checking one of these boxes removes the value. And then because this checkbox does not persist, when you back out and you go back to it, the value it goes back to being unchecked. So I think this workaround is actually a better alternative because it does give you a way to check off everything. You'll get a little dialog that says done. If you want, you could add in some transitions, for example, on component tab or on change. You could set up whatever you want. So I have a separate video, so you could check out my channel, but there's options to essentially make the component bounce, or you could do any number of things. So this is probably one of the best ways to go ahead and get started with your to-do app. And again, if you want, off to the side, you could number these, but I just wanted to cover the basics here. So I hope that was helpful in showing you how to save variables to local storage and use the basics of checkboxes. Now, if you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.